Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for having me in here. For the record, Kevin Hardman, Public Works Director.
David Lizotte, Assistant Director.
So we're here to give our annual snow and ice presentation. So as an introduction, as you all know, the purpose of the snow and ice program is for emergency services, right? That's our primary concern when it starts to snow outside and the roads start to get slippery. Secondary to that is, to make sure that routine travel can occur, people getting to and from their homes, businesses, and public buildings. The DPW maintains approximately 320 lane miles of road throughout town, 29 acres of parking lots, and over 23 miles of sidewalk. We monitor the weather conditions during events. We have 3 weather forecasts that we rely on, in addition to 2 real-time weather sensors, one in the north and one in the south. And some of the challenges we deal with related to the storm variabilities include the timing of the storm, how long the storm lasts, the rate of snowfall, what the texture is. Is it a fluffy snow? Is it a heavy wet snow? What the temperatures are during the storm. That can change. What the pavement temperature is during the storm. That can lead to icing conditions, but it can also help us with snow melt. And then pre and post conditions. When we have to deal with back-to-back storms like we did in 2015, that just makes it more challenging for us to get the roads clear and make for safe travel. So I'll let Dave talk about the weather sensing devices we have.
As Kevin said, we have 2, one in the north, one in the south. It's kind of hard to believe, but if you've been here long enough, you do realize that the weather in North Tewksbury can be dramatically different than South Tewksbury. With these models that we're getting, it's 72-hour forecast, 1-hour increments in advance. It allows us to plan when and what best to treat the roads with. We're moving away from the older model, which was salt, 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 into a more technical model where we actually analyze things like air temperature, road temperature, humidity, dew point. So when we do apply a treatment, it's based on science and not just if we put down X amount of pounds per mile, that's good enough. As you'll see later in the presentation, the old model where that was done was wasteful because at some point cars are going to kick it off the road or the temperatures are going to change. They're going to get lower during the storm event. And at that point, dry salt is just not as effective as it should be. So getting these weather stations in the north and the south have been tremendous. This is actually going to be our second full winter season utilizing them. Memory may be a little fuzzy, but I do believe there was one storm last year they thought was going to be catastrophic. A lot of local schools closed, and we got no snow. A lot of upset parents. With this model is we're getting information not just from our weather stations, but from any other weather stations that utilize this program within the state and the area. So it is not just our local, it's actually modeling based on additional data that we're getting access to, and it allows us to adjust our times. So we're not calling people in just because the local weather station said it should snow by 5. Our model is based on our data combined with the data from the state, which is tremendous. We combine those and we actually can adjust our response time to be more cost effective. So I think the next slide is just another example of the.
Kevin, I don't know, we've had this problem with that. There's a little glitch when it starts fading on the thing. I think you got to kind of keep moving it. I don't know what's happening, but this happened at our last presentation. It kept going in and out. I don't know if you have to keep moving it, just keep it active because it kind of like times out quickly.
All right. So if you can see on this slide, it's a little easier than the previous one. We took data from last year in November, roughly around the same time. As you can tell, last year, the black line is your air temperatures. The air temperatures were a lot warmer than they have been. And the blue will be the road temperatures. And the road temperatures are actually a lot warmer than they are now. So by scaling these models 3 days in advance, we know the perfect time to initiate treatments. And because the data in the south is different than the north, that actually changes the time and potentially the liquid brine treatment we're going to activate on the road. So we don't just simply go out and do the same thing in every location. Because as you can see, the curves and the waves, it dramatically changes during the day, at night, and then compared to north and south, there are also different curves that we want to pay attention to.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Yes.
So they're waves, go back to that graph. They're waves, right? And that's the time of day, is that right? 8 PM, 4 PM, is that what it says?
Correct.
Yeah, so
And then it dips at, is that around, how does that work?
so basically, the highs you're seeing are on protected sunny days around, the typical time, around noontime to 2 PM, when the sun's at its highest. That's typically when you're going to see those road temps be the warmest.
Okay, and it's 8 PM.
And then,
Is that 4 AM, or
so,
4 PM.
yeah.
4 PM?
But it's a little,
Oh, because it's going into the next day.
correct. So when you put your mouse on it, it'll show you like 6 AM, 7 AM. You can move it down the line and see the exact temperature.
Yeah.
But what you'll notice is in the winter, you see that dramatic drop off as soon as the sun goes down. Those roads can freeze very quickly. So we want to be ahead of that and know exactly when we should be out treating, So if we know it's going to drop at, 5 PM below freezing, and that's, evening rush hour, we want to get out ahead of that. Versus some days, it may actually wait later on till a post-rush hour, maybe 8, 9 PM, depending on how much sun we had that day. So rather than just go out and just throw salt and then have cars kick it off the road, we want to be more efficient when we're actually doing treatments.
And why is the bigger one flatter? Is that just because it's bigger? It's not, they're the same, right? So the one on the right, we can only see half of the crest of the,
Yeah, that's the same chart spread over, enlarged.
So it's
Yeah,
72
yeah,
hours
yeah. Okay,
and it
all
keeps
right.
moving.
That's what I
So
thought.
as it moves along, you'll see it
Yeah.
start to quickly bounce up because that's about 8 AM. The sun will come up, it'll warm up and it'll go right back up.
yeah, all right. That's interesting stuff, thank you.
So there's a couple of town policies and bylaws that assist us with snow and ice removal. The first is the overnight parking ban from November 1st to March 31st. That also includes a provision that during snowstorms, there is no on-street parking allowed. That's something that the chief of police can enforce. But in addition to that, the public works director has the authority to have vehicles towed. We typically don't like to do that. We work with the police department, we reach out to the homeowners, find out, who's on the street, and they speak with the homeowners and get vehicles moved.
Have we had many problems with that Jim, throughout the community when we have storms?
We do typically see some vehicles on the roads.
Yeah.
And like I said, we reach out to the police department. We've got radios in all the trucks. We radio them in, and then, the police go out and they speak to the homeowners. Sometimes it's, because they left the vehicle in the road overnight. Other times, it's because they're clearing their driveway. They pull out into the street during a storm, and then they're going to pull back in their driveway, which is something that, we understand it happens. We prefer it didn't because we've got to, get the vehicles, the large plows down the road. The other bylaw is about placing obstructions within the roadway, whether it's a hockey net, a basketball hoop. Those things have to be moved outside the roadway. But additionally, you can't deposit snow in the roadway. Not only is it against, the bylaw, but the purpose of it is because residents and motorists who are driving down the road are expecting a consistent condition. If they're driving, then all of a sudden they hit a snow drift or a snow bank in the road because someone plowed out or snow blowed their driveway into the street. It creates a hazard. Cars can lose control and it's a safety issue.
If you can back up one slide, I see this second offense is
So
is it 10, yeah, there's a $10 fine? You can even buy a pizza for $10.
the
I think
bylaw.
that's something that has to be looked at.
So that bylaw is enforced by the chief of police. So that's something that they have the authority to impose a $10 fine. But during snowstorms, I have the authority to just simply have that vehicle towed.
Okay.
And then I have, within a reasonable amount of time, I have to tell the police chief that I towed a vehicle and where it is.
Yeah, I think that's something we have to look at with the chief. I think if you're going to be parking in the middle of the street and there's a snow coming, $10 is,
My guess is we haven't given out a lot of $10 fines.
yeah, I know.
I
That's what I
think
think.
they've towed the vehicle.
I think I would too. So,
Yeah.
My guess is the $10 fine is really for the parking ban, not during snowstorms. When there is a snowstorm, really, we should be looking to speak to the resident if they're going to move it, or just
Yeah.
have the cars towed to make the road safe. So our procedures for snow and ice. During a storm, we have, in anticipation of an event, there's three things that we really do, three stages, right? We pre-treat, anti-icing. We put down brine on the roadways. When the snow starts to accumulate, we get out there and plow the streets, clear the road from, all the snow accumulation. And then the last is de-icing, where as we plow, we put salt down, we're preventing the roads from icing after we've removed the snow. At the end of a storm, after the roads are clear, everything is, passable, we go out and we start sidewalks, and we start pushing back corners and windrows to make sure that sight distances are clear, so it's safe for motorists. And these post-storm activities, those typically occur after we've got the roads clear and our guys have had a chance to take a breath, right? Sometimes we have 27, 28-hour events, and the guys need to take a break for a minute and then, go out and start doing the pushback. I think last year we had one 36-hour event, right? So we had staff punched in and they punched out 36 hours later. So it can be exhausting. So the anti-icing operation, also known as pre-treatment, that's prior to the snow fall. What that does is we put the brine out on the road. It prevents the snow from starting to accumulate on the road, so that it's easier to plow once the snow does start to build up. David talked about the application of salt. That was the norm years ago, right? You go out and you salt the roads in hopes that vehicles will drive over it, crush it, make a nice, brine out of it, essentially, and then the salt, the snow won't stick. Now you actually are putting the brine down on the road initially to prevent that snow from sticking, and then once the snow starts to accumulate, our standard is 2 to 3 inches. We drop blades. We start pushing the snow off the road. The main objective initially is to keep the roads passable, and then as the snow starts to taper off and stop, we then widen the roads and clear things out. Make sure we've got curb to curb clear space in the roads. Like I said earlier, at the end of it, we push back corners and windrows to make sure that sight distances are clear. De-icing, once the snow is stopped and the roads are cleared, we go out and we hit all the major and minor arterials, which we call the mains, the main roads, and then the hills are treated with ice so that, if there's any melt, it'll stay in liquid form, it won't refreeze. We also treat areas that we know to be problematic, whether they're, areas where they get a lot of shade or they, typically have little puddles, what we call bird baths, that could refreeze. We hit those areas as well. I was talking with Dave earlier. I've been here, I think, 12 or so years. And just to think back at what, snow and ice was 12 years ago, trees are 12 years taller, right? I've been here for 12 years. Trees have grown, right? They're going to provide a lot more shade on the roads than they did 10, 12 years ago. So we continually evaluate these areas that we have to spot treat, what we call it, to make sure that we hit those locations that could create black ice and cause problems for drivers. So I talked about our sidewalk operation. We've got 23 miles plus of sidewalk that we clear. We don't clear every sidewalk in town. We typically handle the main areas, the areas around businesses, buildings, Main Street corridor, things like that. We have 3 pieces of equipment with various attachments, whether they're a V-blade, a bucket to move snow, or snow blower attachments. And we go around, and our goal is to have sidewalks cleared 48 hours after the end of the storm, right? Like I said earlier, if, our guys have been in for, extended periods of time, 18, 24 hours, we want to get them some rest before we put them in a piece of equipment to drive down a sidewalk. So the sidewalk operation is interesting because there's a lot of obstructions. It's time consuming. It's not like the roads, which are clear. So we've got guardrails to navigate around. We've got utility poles. Offset obstructions is a good one where, if you look at that picture on the right, the ADA requirements are met because you have clear space to the utility pole, you have clear space to the mailbox, but because they're positioned so close to each other, it's difficult for us to get a piece of equipment by that and properly clear the sidewalk. Other things that we deal with, when we have those obstructions like this school zone ahead sign, right, the sidewalk equipment has to leave the sidewalk, drive onto the grass to get around that. And that damages the grass sometimes. We come back in the spring and we make repairs to those areas. Private property damage, we try to avoid clipping mailboxes and things like that. We try to do the best we can, but there are these obstructions that, aren't thought about necessarily. And then the last one here on the right is equipment damage. Right, again, this sidewalk meets ADA requirements, but it has a steep drop off on one side. And if our driver has to try to get around that and the track leaves the edge of that sidewalk, could end up rolling down that hill. So these are instances where we kind of go up to one side, we've got to back all the way out, drive around, try to get as much as we can from the other direction. So these type of obstructions really slow down the sidewalk operation, which is why ideally we'd get it done quickly after a storm, but it is time consuming to do this work.
Before you go on with that, I just want to, I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm looking at some of the issues we have, and I know some of the locations. That's why every meeting when we have National Grid come in here, saying we are doing things, it's every meeting, we don't want to pull on the sidewalk. Exactly for that reason. They'll tell us the reason why they have to do it. And 90% of the time when I sit and argue with them, all of a sudden that pole can move. Where they say that it's impossible. If you argue, all of a sudden it becomes possible. It's miraculous of how they're able to move something where it was impossible to do so before. And I understand a lot of these are on 38, and we did a construction project out here recently, and because it got federal highway funding, they didn't have to relocate some of the poles because of their guidelines or whatever, which is very frustrating that we're putting something out and you put brand new sidewalks in and you can't get up and down the roadway. But I'm looking at some things that we may have control out of. Is there locations where there's retaining walls that are being built that are close to the sidelines? There's mailboxes there. Is there something that we can work with the town manager and the planning board to talk about? If there's areas where you're having locations, can we ask those homeowners or businesses to relocate their mailboxes or something, or don't allow a building of a retaining wall right up to the limit of our layout? Can we ask for an offset to have, if you're going to build a retaining wall, have it 2 feet back, whatever, so it's not at the very limit of those. And if we bring that list together, maybe we're going to continue on, but one of the things I wanted to bring up, nothing frustrates me more than when I'm going up and down like certain roadways, especially 38, and we get up by Heatherwood in that areas, and I see somebody in a wheelchair that's on the roadway, and we have sidewalks there. They can't get up and down that roadway because of what it may be. One of the things I would like to see us do is be proactive with that, of you go out, you may clear the sidewalks. Business owner hires a contractor to clear their parking lot. They go, they hire them, they push all the snow up on the sidewalk. You've already cleared it. Now you get out there and it's a brick of ice, big block of ice. And even if you wanted to get it out there, you're not going through it because it's just a rock. I know specific areas all the time that seem to have that problem. I'd like to have some communication, if that does happen, with your office and the town manager's office, because right as soon as we get done with this, we're going to be improving licenses for a lot of businesses. And if we have a business that's hiring somebody that keeps pushing and blocking the sidewalk areas, and we're renewing their licenses each year, we're going to have a conversation about, talk to your, when you're issued a permit and you come before the planning board, everything they have, you're supposed to have a place to collect snow. You're supposed to have a place where you have stuff, and it's not supposed to be the sidewalk. You're not supposed to be pushing it on the right of way, you're not supposed to put, and I've been out there when trucks go down the road and you plow the roadway, and 2 seconds later, somebody's coming out of a parking lot and they're pushing it back on the road. It's the game going back and forth. I understand they're doing their job, you're doing your job, and there has to be a little bit of a back and forth while you're doing it, but when it's all said and done, they shouldn't be leaving it in an area that's causing your crews to have difficulty to make the sidewalks clear. So if you're coming across circumstances where that is happening, I want the town manager's office to be aware of it so that we could have a conversation with either our planning board, if somebody's putting something out on the roadway that's causing a concern to clear the sidewalks, or if somebody's blocking it with snow. And, you know, it's not going to be most likely the property owner, it's going to be the contractor they're hiring. And, you know, would say, hey, listen, you got to talk to your contractor, this isn't acceptable, kind of thing. I know there's a lot of areas where we've gone up and, you know, there'll be 10 feet of snow going around in a corner, and because that's where they pile it all. And it's right where there's a handicap accessible ramp, and then people have to drive out in the street. It's not acceptable. I want to make sure that we're documenting it and we work with the businesses going forward. So another thing to add to your list as we're doing it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll add that to, there's a project meeting tomorrow morning. I think, Dave, you're usually on that meeting, right?
Andrew usually goes
Andrew,
to
yeah.
represent us, yes.
You know, bring it up tomorrow at that meeting, and, you know, it's worth just, you know, reintroducing that concern to all the different permitting entities throughout town so that, you know, it's at the forefront of your mind when issues like that, like a retaining wall, come up. And I would just add to that, if you go back maybe 2 or 3 slides, I saw one that interested me. Can you go backwards? Go back. Yeah, that's good. Go back to the other one. One more. Yeah, there you go. So, you know, as a resident, you know, I don't live in Tewksbury, but I go out as a resident, and where that catch basin is, you know, I shovel that out during a storm because I know that if I don't, there's going to be a big puddle. There's a bridge there, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. And then I have a telephone pole like that right next to my house, and I shovel around that telephone pole because I know that the sidewalk plow is going to come by, and they're not going to be able to get by that. And what they do is they go around it and leave a big pile of snow in the middle of the sidewalk. So I shovel that area out so that they don't have to deal with it. Now, I know that a lot of people aren't able-bodied and they can't do that, but I just ask homeowners that are watching to be more aware of those things. In hydrants in front of your house, it's in your best interest to get out and shovel it as soon as you see it, because God knows if you ever need it. But it's those things help the DPW in these odd scenarios where, you know, the machines just can't do it, and we can't get back to every little idiosyncrasy and take care of everything. So I would just ask, just like the chairman's asking me to ask the permitting people to think ahead, I'm asking the residents to think ahead too. And and people know, because they live in their homes, they know exactly what the problems are. Just be more aware of trying to address them outside of your home to help the DPW and the snow removal process.
Do you have a list of where the trouble spots are?
You mean as far as the
As far
sidewalks
as the
go?
sidewalks, you know, because if you go back that one slide and you look at the school zone ahead, did the state put that sign up or did we put that sign up?
That's at the Trahan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was part of the TIP project down there.
So we had to place that sign there and not where the plow was on the lawn or the grass?
So the problem we often run into is the back of the sidewalk is the edge of the right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
So the sign can't be placed outside of the right-of-way because it's not owned by the town. The town doesn't have control over it. So often we're forced to put the sign closer to the road so that the plow can get around the back of it. You know, and obviously this location is unique now, as the Trahan is no longer a school.
Right.
We can look at removing a sign like that. You know, but there, again.
But that's why I asked if you had a list of, if you had 100 mailboxes that are in the way on one particular street. You know, if you had something where we could at least reach out to those residents and see if we could move something.
So mailboxes, you bring up, that's a very unique situation.
That's because the post office runs it.
The postmaster controls that.
Yeah.
The mailbox needs to be 6 to 8 inches from the face of the curb. It can't be any further back than that. And as you can see in this middle picture, you know, a mailbox is typically 15 to 18 inches long, depending on where the post sits. So, you know, that makes a challenge when it needs to be 6 inches back from the face of the curb, right? And say it's 18 inches long. Now you're taking up 24 inches, 2 feet of your sidewalk. Your sidewalk's only 5 feet wide, and you've got a retaining wall there, but your piece of equipment is 48 inches wide. The math doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't get by. We have worked with the postmaster on the Shawshene Street sidewalk project. He allowed us to rotate the mailboxes 90 degrees. And then on subsequent projects, he said, nope, they need to go back perpendicular to the roadway. You know, that by rotating them, that saved us, instead of being 18 inches wide, it was less than 6 inches wide. And that gave us an extra foot to get by. But then on projects
It's not
after
like the
that,
city where the mail carrier gets out of the car or out of the truck and goes to the house. That's unfortunate.
But if, like to my colleague has mentioned, if we do have a list, and we know what the issues are, let's get the list ahead of time. Instead of saying, we can't do it, let's find a way around to at least have conversations with, is there something, like, the answer is, we have a sign out here that's out by the Trahan. Trahan's no longer open. I bet you that sign's still there. Let's go take it down. One problem solved, you know? It's like, let's get that one done. You know, where we're going around this, where they have the telephone pole out there, and we had, like, they built around it to try to get around there.
Yeah.
You know, let's see what we can do. And the retaining wall and things like that, but once again, it's a permitting issue. You know, it's like, you know, are you allowed to build a retaining wall right up to the limit of what it is? And I'm guessing if there's a retaining wall there, there's probably some drainage that's probably coming off that retaining wall that may be leaking water onto the roadway. If it's putting ice out there, whatever it is, it's causing issues. I'm not trying to make difficulty on homeowners or businesses or anything like that, but our priority is to make sure the residents want sidewalks, and they want accessible sidewalks. They don't want sidewalks 8 months a year. They want them all year. I know you can't clear every sidewalk, but we have a lot of handicapped people in the community that want to get up and down the roadway. They don't care if it's snowing. I've seen them out there in there. It's amazing how many wheelchairs I've seen going down 38 when there's snow out there. Me and you wouldn't walk out there. They don't care. They're driving their wheelchairs to Market Basket or wherever they may be going, and they'll be right in the middle of the storm. I don't want to see somebody get killed because of it. And I want to also make sure when the kids are getting on the buses, that they're accessible, that the kids are getting off and there's a spot for the kids to be standing there when the buses are going there. We don't need another excuse of why the kids aren't taking the bus. This is something that when they're being picked up, I want to make sure that there's a clear sidewalk where the kids can get on and off, and there's no sight distance issues or whatever it may be. But, we could, if you have issues, instead of just saying we have issues, let's see if we can work through it with our departments or whoever we may have, and just see if we know we have problems that we're having, let's see if we can get them fixed so that next year maybe that list isn't as long.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. So snow removal at the schools, we anticipate, because of the size of the Ryan and Center School campus, that when we do get more snow than normal, we're going to have to truck that. They do have a snow storage area in the back parking lot that we'd truck it to, and we'd be prepared to do that. We will have a dedicated front-end loader and pusher box to be utilized at the schools. Those are some of the larger parking lots we have. Like I said earlier, 29 acres of parking lots, and I'd say the majority of it is the schools. And we work very closely with the schools now that we're in the same building. John Marchand is great to work with, and we'll be working closely with him during the coming season. So this is the organizational chart of the snow and ice operation, with the assistant director overseeing the snow and ice coordinator. And that snow and ice coordinator oversees 5 route supervisors. The town is separated into 5 sections: the north, south, east, west, and center. Each route supervisor has a group of contractors as well as town staff that they manage and oversee. We have 27 in-house staff at the DPW. We've got 3 staff in the Parks Facilities Department, and we have been working lately with the school department over the past few years, working really closely with them during snow and ice operations to clear the snow at the schools. Our contracted equipment varies from year to year, anywhere from 40 to 55 pieces of equipment. It's been, difficult to get contractors year after year. We're just seeing across the board that there's less people that do that type of work. There's less, guys that drive pickup trucks that throw a plow on the front of it. We get small pickup trucks, but we also get some front end loaders as contractors. It varies, some small equipment to large equipment. So some of the changes that we've made recently is we've done some route assessments, right? Dave has done a great job looking at the lane miles of road in town. We've split the town up into 48 different plow routes, exclusive of the major arterials. And each plow route, Dave, is set up to be approximately the same length and time, right? So if it takes X amount of minutes to clear this one plow route, that's pretty much consistent with all the plow routes across town. So we can kind of plug and play as we assign these plow routes to our town staff as well as contractors. The liquid brine system that we're installing at the DPW is going to be a game changer, and I'll let Dave talk about that in a minute. That's going to be located in our old building. We adjust our contractor rate structure so that we can be competitive with our adjacent communities, right? We don't want to lose plow contractors to other communities simply because we're not willing to keep up with the current market rate.
How competitive are we?
Excuse me?
How competitive are we?
We're very competitive. I'll get into that in a little more detail, but I've had conversations with other directors and what they're doing to change their contract structures. And it's less about the hourly rate. It's more about the incentives. And I'll get into that in a bit. The other thing that we've done this year is we modified the rate for retirees. We've got a few retirees that come back and plow for us. They're great assets. They know the town. They know what areas get slippery, what areas need a little more treatment, what areas need what. So we've increased that pricing to keep up with the market rate for the retirees as well. So as I was saying, for salting, we've got 5 major sections in town, 13 total salting routes. We've got a equipment calibration process to meet our chloride reduction plan, which is part of the EPA MS4 permit for the stormwater control. And since we've put this calibration and routing process in, we've seen about a 64% reduction in salt use, which is what Dave was talking about earlier, that, the old way of just, more salt and hit it harder, it's not the proper way to do it. In addition to the DPW calibration, we've undertaken calibration of the schools and facilities departments standards to help reduce overall salt use, protect the environment, while providing the same level of safety throughout town. So this is a graph of the salt cost per ton from the 2019-2020 season through this season. This is bid and purchased through a consortium. So you can see pre-COVID prices were down. Post-COVID, as with everything else, milk, eggs, bread, prices skyrocketed. What we've seen between the 23-24 and 24-25 season is about a 7% increase in salt cost. This season, we're at a 3% increase. So it's starting to level off. And we're hoping that's going to be the trend moving forward. So this is the liquid brine machine. I'll let Dave talk about this.
So at a previous town meeting, the town was generous enough to invest in this piece of equipment. As we mentioned, it's becoming more of a science and less of a throw more salt, dry salt on the ground. I guess the easiest way to explain this is if you go to your doctor, he prescribes you medicine, it's at a dosage. You don't take double the dosage thinking it's going to get you healthier twice as fast. So we've gotten everyone out of the mindset of just put more salt down. And now we're leaning more into the science of liquid. Liquid is much more effective when done correctly. But by the same token, that doesn't mean just put more salt in a liquid mix and put it on the ground as well. So prior to the town giving us the funding to purchase this new system, we were paying $1.73 per gallon last year. Based on the cost of the salt materials, the electricity, and the water cost, we're going to be able to drop that to about 20 cents per gallon. That's essentially an 88% cut in what we were spending. That provides us more flexibility to actually expand our salting program with liquid and actually not increase the cost to the taxpayers, similar to how we adjusted our dry salt by calibrating our machines. We're now going to hit the town with liquid. We're going to experiment a little this year. So we will have to come up with new liquid treatment routes. But if we go on the basic assumption of if we do 5 full treatments a year, based on that cost savings we have per gallon, where town's going to essentially get a return on their investment within about 2 years, which basically is phenomenal. So years 3, 4, and 5, we're essentially saving the full difference in the cost that we would have paid at market. The other reason why it's critical this comes in-house versus outside, as Kevin said, not only is it harder to find plow drivers, it's harder to find the base materials. We had to go to upstate New York for a supplier to get our material last year. We were dependent on someone that was 5-6 hours away getting our delivery to make sure we have enough for the next storm event. It's not a sustainable model anymore where we're relying on, I think an hour outside Buffalo, not having heavy snowstorms to get that trailer all the way down to Tewksbury to drop off our load. And I think that's probably why the cost is so astronomical now, is all the extra fuel costs and time of getting it here. As I'll mention, the reason why the weather stations are critical to complement this is basically you can apply the liquid when there's a difference between the dew point and the air temp greater than 3 degrees. So we need to monitor that. We need to monitor the road temp so the application has time to apply itself into the road before the road surface temp drops below 20. So we need a lot more data now than just simply let's go fill a tank and just put this on the ground. And without that kind of real-time updated data, we could potentially be treating incorrectly and just causing more problems by applying it either too early, too late, or at a ratio where it's not going to be effective because there are different additives. All salt is not created equal. There's calcium chloride, magnesium chloride. So like I said, we're going to lean into the science of this and not just simply, go to Chelsea, get a bunch of salt, mix it with water, and just throw it on the road and cross our fingers. There's different types of chloride that we're going to be using in these mixes based on road temperatures and all these other metrics of data we're getting, so we have the most effective product, so we're not going to make it worse. When the guys went to the brine class, they learned that if you apply it incorrectly or use the wrong material, say you use magnesium versus calcium with a certain temperature, you can actually create ice pack by putting salt on the road, which kind of seems counterintuitive, like how's that possible? I'm putting salt on the road, but the same thing is different salt mixtures, calcium, magnesium chloride, they react differently with different temperatures, so we need to have the data, hit it hard and hit it correctly, so everyone not only is safe, but we're going to save potentially a lot of money doing it this way now.
A quick question on that, just before we move on, because I just want, do we have road temperature sensors in a lot of the vehicles?
Yeah, so as Kevin pointed out, we have 5 major areas. Currently, we want to ensure that those supervisors each have road temperature sensors in their vehicles, so they can communicate back that even though the sensor in the north is indicating one temperature, one quadrant over in the east is actually indicating a different road temperature versus the west versus the center. So we want to get as much data as possible back. So it's almost like going to like a restaurant now. You can put in whatever mixed soda you want at the machine. It's very similar. We'll have preset mixtures with different ratios of percentage of salt, type of salt, and that'll go into the truck. So if the east is reading differently than the north or the west, we want to appropriate the correct material and not just blanket a calcium across the whole town, because it may be ineffective and actually causing more harm.
No, I don't want to keep interrupting you. I was just curious, but we'll make sure we have that when we're doing it. Okay, continue.
So plow routes, again, the 5 sections, we've got 48 plow routes. That excludes the major roadway network, which is typically the route supervisor, and the larger trucks are handling that. This allows us to know who's responsible for what section. We have maps, just like the one here as an example plow route. That is handed to a driver. You're in Route C1. So if we get a call of, hey, someone hit my mailbox, where do you live? Oh, looks, you're in C1. We know exactly who was out there. We can address issues, things like that. It adds for accountability with the contractors that we use. Not that most people don't have a Ring doorbell and can't see, what truck came by at what time anyway. So speaking of the contractors, right? So the contractors make up about 60% of our plow force and equipment while we're out there during an event. Currently, we have contracts available at the DPW for pickup. Contractors are welcome to come down and get those. Our rates have remained unchanged since last year, and that's something we look at MassDOT's rates. We talk to our adjacent communities, see what everyone's doing. What we have done is we've increased the bonuses, and we've also added a $4,000 guarantee. When a contractor signs up and gets all their paperwork in, they're guaranteed $4,000 for the season. One of the big reasons for that is if you are a contractor and you want to plow, you're required to provide your insurance information to the town. We're hearing that it's anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 up front that these contractors have to pay their insurance company to get that rider, right? That rider is not prorated for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. That is a flat fee that they pay to get in the door, right? So they're putting money out of pocket. If you have a larger piece of equipment, a front end loader or something like that, it could be more than $2,000 that you have to spend up front to become a plow contractor for a municipality. We need to provide these contractors with a guarantee that they're going to make that money back, that their operating expenses will be covered. I will say that the last 5-year average, what we have paid contractors is around $6,000 a year per piece of equipment. The lowest it was is 2 seasons ago. It was $3,800, right? And that's kind of where we decided to set that guarantee. In addition, I'll say, our rates were a little bit lower back then, so that could have easily been, at today's rates for the amount of hours they put in, it could easily be over $4,000. So contractors have to get their vehicles inspected by the DPW. They come down to our yard. Our guys go through it. They make sure that the equipment is operating. They've got all the proper safety features that they're required to have. So those inspections are held on Saturday, the 22nd of November, Friday, December 5th, and Saturday, December 6th, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. The deadline for the early sign-on bonus is December 10th at noon. And I'll talk about the changes. Like I said, the sign-on bonus this year is $500. It was $350 last season. In addition, we have an attendance bonus. If you show up for every storm you're called in for, you get $500. If you miss one event that you're called in for, you get $400. If you miss 2 events, there's no attendance bonus. And like I said, we added the $4,000 guarantee. So this is the amount we have paid out over the last 6 years for our contractors. Going back to 2020, we spent about $185,000 on contractors. We hit a high last year. We had a lot of smaller snowstorms, 2, 3, 4-inch snowstorms that we needed to bring the contractors in for, and we spent close to $400,000 on contractors last year.
Kevin,
Yes.
go back to that. It would be interesting, you can't do it now, but correlate that with snowfall. See what the correlation is.
Right.
But I don't know if what you just said, I mean, you have those small storms frequently that kind of croaks you,
It does, because the contractors do get a 4-hour minimum
Right.
for coming in. So if they come in and they work 3 hours and they're able to get everything done, the snow stops, if it's what we call a quick hit, then, they're still getting that 4-hour minimum. If they get called in for 6 hours, they get paid for 6 hours, the kind of time worked after 4 hours. But, yeah, so you make a good point, Mr. Town Manager, that, there probably is a correlation between how much we spend and how much snow fell, but there are some variations to it.
Well, last year was not really, it was kind of mild, but there were a lot of small events, right?
There were a lot of small events, yeah.
Maybe that's
It
the
was every
comparison.
Saturday.
Maybe that's the comparison you want to make. It'd just be interesting to see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So how can residents help, right? Observe the parking bans, make sure obstacles are cleared out of the roadway. When it's trash day, put your trash and recycling containers in the entrance of your driveway, not out in the street. Reduce speeds, right? Slow down, drive cautiously. Clear snow from hydrants in front of your home. I know that was touched on earlier. Open up the catch basins along the road, because when the snow starts to melt, it's got to have a place to go. Don't plow or blow snow into the road. We talked about that earlier. That's a big hazard, not just for us. We've got to push that snow back off the road, but anyone driving down the road is going to hit an unsafe condition. We do provide a mixture of sand and salt down at the DPW for residents to come and, fill up 5-gallon buckets, take it home so they can throw that down in their walkways and their driveway. Understand that after the snow stops, it doesn't mean we're done. We sometimes have 8 to 10 hours of work left pushing things back. And then we get out and we start to clear sidewalks and things like that. So, just have patience, give us time, know that, if we've got 40 to 50 pieces of contracted equipment plus an additional 30, you've got 80 people out there doing their job, trying to get the roads cleared. But it does take time. And, last thing, just have patience. 157 miles of road, it's sometimes challenging to clear. A lot of times it depends on when the storm happens, right? I will never forget there was a storm that I got stuck in because the governor at the time declared a state of emergency and said, send everybody home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the highways were jam-packed. No one could get anywhere. The plow drivers couldn't get the highways cleared, couldn't get their job done, and it congests everything. So timing is everything, right? If a storm happens in the middle of the night, we've got a much better chance of getting the roads cleared without traffic in the way. If it happens in the middle of the day, it's more challenging. It's going to take more time. So, we ask that people have patience and let us get our job done.
I would just add to that too, to maybe put on this list is runners to not run during snow events. Because, it's a horrible thing if a plow, one of your employees or a contractor happens to hit somebody who's running and they have to live with that. And, you can wait 48 hours to run again. But I would just ask the public not to run during snow events while the roads are being cleared.
That's a great point. And, the last thing I want to do is just thank our staff. We've got a bunch of great individuals that work at the DPW that put in a lot of long hours between now and April, to make sure that the world keeps running and people can get safely where they need to go. So, thank you for your time.
All right, I'm going to open up to the board. Mr. Holland?
Yeah, I have just one question. You answered most of all of my questions. What is the life expectancy of that brine machine?
So the good news is we've actually made room in the old water bay to put it inside, so it's not exposed to the elements. So it's less likely. It is stainless steel, but the other components in there will rust. So by keeping it inside out of the elements and keeping it clean, it should last quite a bit. As far as the exact timeline, I'd have to ask other communities. Mostly communities that gave us the recommendation have only had it for a few years. So I'd have to defer to them as far as how
So there's
long
no-
it's going to last.
There's no true way of telling because nobody's had it for that long.
Essentially, because back, years ago, it was much cheaper to get this brine because there were suppliers. Now, like I said, we're going to New York, and now it's like, you might as well just buy the machine local, put
Yeah.
it in your yard, and just make it yourself.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Thank you for your presentation also.
Yeah, I have no question. You actually answered everything I had, so this is perfect. I know it's tough. The next few months are going to be long, so thank you for all the things that you guys are doing out there. Appreciate it.
They're very nice. You know you're not getting out easy with me. So, I got a bunch. It's the same thing every year. We've been doing this a long time. It's a lot of the things that are common sense, things that we get. We want residents to work with us. We want them to be able to, like I said, if you're clearing an area and don't push it out of your driveway, don't push it into the roadway. Businesses don't have a contractor blocking something that we just cleared the sidewalks. Don't be pushing the snow up and blocking and causing sight distances, especially when you're coming up and you're building mounds instead of putting it where you're supposed to put it. If you bring it up to the roadway and now a vehicle's trying to get out and you got a hill that's 6 feet high and the vehicle's 4 feet high and you're coming out, we're going to have accidents. So all common sense things that we want to work on. One of the things I'd like to do is us also being a little proactive. I think the town can be more informative of, I love the fact, one of the things that you do wonderful is when we're out and we're paving roadways and we're doing certain things expect us to be doing this. We're doing tree cutting. We're doing hydrant flushing. There's a water break, expect this. And we're informing the public ahead of time so with the same things we're going to get. When we get the snow and ice operations and residents have concerns and calls, a lot of times they call down there. Do we have somebody who's answering those calls that will be answering, if there is a concern or something that's happening, do we have somebody during snow and ice operations that's actually going to be taking calls?
Yes, we always do. We always have. That person logs all the calls so we can track trends and things like that. If we get 2 storms, we get the same call from the same location, then the third storm, we learn, let's look at that in advance and let's not wait till the call comes in.
Okay. If we know there's a storm coming ahead of time, if we have, and it's horrible what the news stations do. They make money off of selling commercials. So they're going to tell us that the world's coming to an end every time there's going to be a flurry. And it's just, we got a big storm coming, and you can catch the snow in a Dixie cup by the time they're done. So I don't ever take into consideration what news stations are putting out there, because they always, we're getting a dusting, and they'll make it sound like the blizzard of '78, because they want everyone to stay tuned and watch their commercials. But I do want to make sure if there is something, and especially icing, those type of things, I think it's advantageous for us to get out there saying, hey, listen, we're going to be pre-treating roadways. If you see something out there, we'll be out. We know there's an event coming. Our vehicle's going to be out pre-treating roadways, and they always see it. What's these lines out on the roadway? That's what's going on there. I love the fact that you talked about the science of it, because I know you need proper temperatures with this chemicals, because if you put the wrong stuff out there and somebody said, why didn't you pre-treat? Well, if you actually put it out there and there's a rain condition, that can actually make the road slippery. If you're putting something out there and the road temperature's not a thing. So there's a reason behind everything you do. I want to educate the residents on why you're doing certain things. So it's why didn't we pre-treat? Well, because it could have been rain and it could have made the road slippery. But if there's an icing or a certain thing, I'd like to see you using your social media as well to put those things out there to say, hey, listen, we're expecting a 2-day storm. We don't know if we're going to get it, but please the same exact things you just said. Please put your ballots back, do it like that. Please be courteous, help us, help you, kind of thing, and put those things out there. When the contractors are coming out and you're doing it, I know there'll probably be a lot of residents at home saying, why are we paying contractors that we're not doing it? Because you can't get them. Plain and simple. You know, people don't want to pay for something that they're not doing services, but you know what? If all of a sudden your road's covered in snow and there's no one showing up, because it's not worth it for them. It's making it more and more difficult to get contractors, because a lot of the contractors, what people don't realize, they're landscapers. This isn't their full-time job. They're making a couple of $1,000s a year, and they have to be on call all year round, waiting for that phone call to come. And they have to have their plows on their vehicles, fuel costs are very high, and you have to have all the things, and like you said, you have to pay those fees ahead of time. I've talked to a couple of reps and senators talking about maybe every community has to build the signboards out. We're looking for snow and ice. We're not the only community. You can drive in Wilmington, you can drive in Billerica, Bedford. Every single town has a sign message board out. We're hiring snow and ice contractors. And so we're competing with everyone around us. So the fact that you're being proactive, I think that's great. Get who you can get, keep the good people, and make sure they know the roots of what we're doing. Because, I mean, it's New England. We're going to have snow on, I've been in North Tewksbury, where you think that like the further north you go, it's going to be colder. And I've been sitting down the other end of Clark Road, and you're staring up at the stars, and and then all of a sudden a truck comes from the other end of town and it's covered with snow. It's incredible how the wind patterns can go along the Shawshene River and blow around there. One of the guys who knew more about this thing is our finance, Mr. Asnavorian. His father worked snow and ice for us and was a maintenance engineer for like 60 years. He taught me about how 128 and 495 was built at certain elevations. That's why they always say, if you're north of 128, because it's an elevation, the higher you up, the colder it gets. Those are the things that all are factors in what we're doing. But I would like to make sure that if we have problemed areas, I mean, we have new snow and ice contractors, there's going to be problems. So somebody's road may not get cleared in, doing the main roads, and we're trying to make that very clear. The priority is to get the roads safely open. You're not going to come and plow the entire road. You're going to plow down, you're going to make it so that the plow can go through and vehicles can get in and out. When the storm is dying down, then you're going to do the thorough clearing. That you're going to open the whole road up, you're going to push back, you're going to do the corners, do all those type of things. When we have minor storms, I know you say our contractors will be working 27 hours and we want to give them a break. But we also have some storms where it may be, 8 hours or 9 hours. I'd like to see to get those sidewalk plows out there a little bit earlier. If it's possible to make sure and make it, if we have sidewalks that aren't being done, parents are going to be concerned. They're getting in their cars, they're going to work, and their kids are going to school. And, they said they're going to look out there and they're going to say, hey, the sidewalks haven't been cleared. How come? Put it out there. Hey, listen, we just worked a 27-hour storm. We plan on being out there to start working on the sidewalks. Why wait for the phone call? If we know what we're doing, put it out there. Be proactive. Let the residents know what you're doing and how you're doing it. I know everyone's tired. I know everyone's working hard, but I'd also like to be like, the more we can get out there, the more information it makes it for the residents. I think it's going to make your job a lot easier. It's going to make our life a lot easier. And John's not going to get as many phone calls because every year we're going to get them. You're going to get them. We're going to get them. And it's going to be something, my road wasn't closed. My thing wasn't done. Something, they plowed snow up so high in front of my house that I can't see. And now it's melting and there's a thing out there. So now it's making the road a sheet. I mean, there's certain areas in this town where you can plow and it melts. And then when it melts out there and it freezes, you can get stuck on a main road. And so you got to get a loader out there to push back. You got to make sure that it drains. There's all kinds of things that we have to take into consideration. But when we have those things, let's be courteous. Let's find a way to make sure that the residents know we're listening to them when we're doing something. All the equipment and like we're going to have the calcium and on the combos and things like that, so that we're going to be treating and using less salts because we'll be using most of these things all have computers on them that will be showing lane miles and how many you're spreading. We were talking about the tax rate today and how much we're doing. And one of the things that you just showed, the cost of salt. Well, we shouldn't be paying that cost of salt right now because as of last year, you should have filled that bond to the max with the things. And so we're not paying that rate right now because we paid last year's rate and we thought ahead. And instead of us paying that additional, how much more is it for a ton right now?
About 3% more.
3% more. So instead of paying that 3% more, what we did is last year we took it while we had a lower rate and we filled the bond. So it's filled to the max. Once we get through it, we're going to have to buy it with a new rate, but we're always trying to think ahead of cost savings for the residents. I love the fact that we have our own brine machine. If we can, keep that in, store it and have those type of things. I don't know how long. I know you have containers out there, but if we can have that ready, and I know it's only good on certain roadways and temperatures, but if there's a cost savings, I'd like to, at the end of next year, I'd like to come back and give us this is how much we produced, this is what we paid for in previous years, buying it, and this is how much we saved by doing it ourselves. And have all those things. But it's, information is great, but, and I've worked with, DPWs and highway workers, and communications is not the strong point. It's just that your job is, I just want to go out and get the road clear. I get it. I don't want to, that's your job to go and talk to everybody. I get it. But it really is, we need your help. So it's as if you can share the information to make sure that we can get it out to the residents you're doing a wonderful job. I want to make sure that we're telling people what you're doing. So if you're getting contractors in, you're being proactive, you're doing those things, let's get it out there ahead of time. If parents are concerned about their kids going to school and getting in the cars and driving to the school, all right, well, we went out there, we pre-treated. Everything's being done. We know what we're doing. Be proactive with it. Like I said, if you're doing a good job, let people know what you're doing. And I think that'll take away from a lot of the calls that we're doing. The sidewalk issues, I want to make sure that we're being adamant with that if there's an issue where somebody's leaving something out there, I don't want to just have it, we can't, they blocked it and we're just frustrated and we went around it. No, let's find out what a solution is. If somebody's doing that each year, let the town manager know. We can work with Alex and planning and the projects, and we can contact people and say, because it may just be the business owner, and the business owner's not the one who's doing it. They're hiring a contractor. Contractor's being lazy and shoving it up in a pile. So let's find out who they are and make sure that instead of us going out there and doing it, let's make them go back out there and clear what they pushed out there and just be proactive with those type of things. But, this is always very helpful for the residents. I'd like to have this presentation not only on the DPW website, but I'd like to have the town manager, make sure we're putting it up on ours.
Yeah,
Maybe work with Brian in social media and see if we can put it on telemedia and have it play a couple of things of this is what we're doing. Here's what we're doing in snow and ice, and here's what we want to do, and let residents know how they can help us and how we can help them. And if you have problems and concerns, here's who you call. And we're willing to work with you, you work with us. So. All right, Mr. Town Manager, do you have any other things you'd like to add to it?
No, I just want to thank that's an impressive presentation. I love seeing the science in there, and clearly there's some things I think that you're saving some money with, and great work, both of you, and keep fingers crossed that we don't get the temperatures stay a little bit higher.
The worst thing that, and I can guarantee you that the people across from me will agree with me. You'd rather have 10 inches of snow than 2 inches of ice. You know,
Yeah.
that's where, when you're talking about the cost of things that are going out, when you have black ice and sleet and icing conditions, it's 10 times, so you can deal with snow all day long. When it's snowing and it's coming down, you know what you're dealing with, and it actually kind of keeps the ground warm when it's out there, and you can clear it. But it's those conditions when you don't know when it's coming in. It's like you have something, it could be 37 degrees, and it's snowing. And it's supposed to be 32 is freezing point. Doesn't make a difference. You got wind conditions where it's blowing the wind off a certain area and it comes in and you're not expecting it. It'll happen. You'll have one area that's like it's a sheet of ice and you go on the other side of town and it's dry as can be. So it's not an easy thing to do, but I appreciate your efforts and making sure that like you're taking ways of saving tax dollars by not just throwing salt out there because the news station says it's going to snow. You're going out there, you're pre-treating, you're saving costs, and salt is very, very expensive. And making sure that you're pre-treating and using the calcium and the other type of things is saving a lot of tax dollars. And, you know, by using the combos and those things, it's like the amount of salt that we're using probably in the 80s compared to what we're using now is probably half of what we're doing because of the new technology. So it may not seem like a lot, but if you can pre-treat roadways and you can make sure that you're not throwing all the salt, because we got to go clear those catch basins in the spring anyway. So we don't want to fill it up with sediment if we don't have to. So you're doing a wonderful job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.